All right, good morning, friends. It's good to see you. This week in math, we're going to talk about a very important concept. We're going to talk about time. We know we look at clocks for time. Time tells us when we need to be at school. Time tells us when we need to eat breakfast, when we need to eat lunch, when we need to go to dinner. Time is very important. It helps us manage our day. So this week we're going to do a little introduction on time. We're going to be telling time to the hour. That means we're going to be using the word o'clock when we talk about hours. Okay, we're going to talk about things like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. You hear that often. We have to be there at 8 o'clock. We have to be there at 4 o'clock. When we talk about o'clock, we're talking about on the hour, 5 o'clock, okay? Before we get started on that, though, I want to read you a funny story. It's called Clocks and More Clocks. I love reading this story because it's about a clockmaker who has a problem in his house. One day, Mr. Higgins found a clock in the attic. So he found one of those big old grandfather clocks that you might hear sometimes. So he went out and bought another, which he placed in the bedroom. Okay, so he goes out and buys another clock. He has one up in the attic, and now he puts one down in his bedroom. Okay. 3 o'clock, said Mr. Higgins. I'll see if the other clock is right. So he ran up to the attic, but the clock there said 1 minute past 3. How do I know which clock is right? He thought. Now remember, he had to leave the one clock to run upstairs to the other clock. So he went out and bought another clock, which he placed in the kitchen. 10 minutes to 4. I'll check the other clocks. He ran up to the attic. The attic clock said 8 minutes to 4. So it's saying a different time than the kitchen clock. He ran down to the bedroom. The bedroom clock said 7 minutes to 4. I still don't know which clock is right. So he went out and bought another clock, which he placed in the hall. 20 minutes past 4, he said. Well, and he ran up to the attic. The attic there said 23 minutes past 4. He ran down to the kitchen. The kitchen clock said 25 minutes past 4. He ran up to the bedroom. The bedroom clock there said 26 minutes past 4. This is no good at all, thought Mr. Higgins. None of my clocks are telling the right time. So he went to the clockmaker. My hall clock says 20 minutes past 4. My attic closet says 23 minutes past 4. My kitchen clock says 25 minutes past 4. My bedroom clock says 26 minutes past 4. And I don't know which one is right, said Mr. Higgins. So he took all the clocks to the clockmaker. So the clockmaker went to the house to look at all the clocks. The hall clock said 5 o'clock. There's nothing wrong with this clock, said the clockmaker. Look. The kitchen clock said 1 minute past 5. There, shouted Mr. Higgins. Your watch said 5 o'clock, but it is 1 minute past now, said the clockmaker. Look. So remember, it takes some time to go from clock to clock. The bedroom clock said 2 minutes past 5. Absolutely correct, said the clockmaker. Look. The attic clock said 3 minutes past 5. There's nothing wrong with this clock either, said the clockmaker. Look. What a wonderful watch, said Mr. Higgins. And he went out and bought one. And since he bought his watch, all of his clocks have been right. So what was happening in the story? He would go and look at one clock in one room, and then he'd go to the next room. But while he was going to the next room, time keeps going. So the clock in the next room would say the later time than what the clock in the other room had said, because it takes him time to go from room to room. So he kept thinking, because he was looking at the clock in each different room, that they weren't matching. But what did he use then to match? What did the clockmaker have? He had a watch, right? So the watch would travel with him from room to room. So it would match his watch, which would be telling the true time. So I think Mr. Higgins went out and got a watch. All right. This week we are going to talk about clocks. And we're already ahead because we know that if we go from room to room, our clocks aren't going to stay the same because time keeps moving. Very good. All right. So this week, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be talking about the parts of the clock, because it's really important to understand, because there are moving parts on a clock. So if you look at my watch very carefully, you can see one arm is moving, okay? And the other ones are staying in place right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you take a look at my big clock here, okay? And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the different parts of a clock, okay? We're going to talk about the different parts of the clock. So the first thing we're going to look at is this whole big part of the clock is called the face of the clock. Just like we have a face, a clock has a face. And on that face are some very important things. There are the clock numbers, right? So our clock numbers go, they start 1, say them with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, okay? Our clock numbers go from 1 to 12. Those are our hours on our clock, okay? Those are our hours. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about, because our clocks move around, I'm going to talk about how we talk about the different hands on our clock. So we have hands. A clock has hands. The clock has an hour hand, which is that shorter hand, and it points to these numbers. And then this blue one is called the minute hand. And that tells us how many minutes after an hour. So for example, when Mr. Higgins was talking about 10 minutes past 4 o'clock or 8 minutes, when we're talking about the minutes, this is the hand that we're talking about. Today, what we're really going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about that hour hand. We're going to be talking about this hand right here, the shorter hand. We're really going to talk about that. So when we're talking about that hour hand, our minute we're going to be looking at is pointed to the 12, because we're really going to be focusing on that minute, or those hours, time to the hour, okay? So, for example, so we have the face of our clock, we have the numbers on our clock, we have the clock numbers, we have our hour hand, and we also have our minute hand. Now, there is one other part on the clock too that is moving, and that was the one that I just mentioned. And if you can see, that's the second hand, and that's moving around. And if you look at our big clock, you see all these little dots. Those are the seconds, okay? So there are 60. If you look very carefully, you can see a 60 up here. I think you can see that up there. There are 60 seconds in a minute. So each time that second hand, the one that's moving right now on my clock, goes around once, this blue minute hand will move one spot on the clock, okay? This hand moves one time this way when this minute hand goes all the way around, okay? And that takes 60 minutes for that to go all the way around. And that's 1 hour, okay? But what we're really gonna do is talk about where this hour hand is pointing when the minute hand is at that 12, okay? And the word we're gonna be using for that is we're gonna be talking about o'clock. So let's take a look at our clock. All right, right now my hour hand is pointing to the number 2. Very good. So I would say that that is 2 o'clock. All right. If I move it down to here, that is going to say 4 o'clock. Very good. That's going to say 4 o'clock. When my little hand is pointing to the 4 and the big hand is pointing to the 12, that's going to say 4 o'clock. Very good. All right. If I turn it one more time, and it goes all the way around one time, now if my big little hand is pointing to the 5, that means it is 5 o'clock. Very good. All right. So let's practice. If it's pointing to the 8, it's going to be 8 o'clock. Very good. If I send it around again and it's pointing to the 10, we would say it is 10 o'clock. Very good. And if I go all the way up here and they're both pointing to the 12, 12 o'clock. Very good. All right, so if I send it over here again, let's take a look. This is 1 o'clock. Very good. The blue hand is called my minutes hand. And the red one, the littler one, is called my hour hand. When they go all the way around these numbers, they are called the clock numbers. And if you look again at my watch, that hand that is moving quickly is called the second hand. Very good. All right, what we're going to do today is we're going to label the parts of a clock. And then we're also going to practice drawing on a clock, okay? All right, so the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is let's take a look at our clock parts worksheet, okay? All right, down at the bottom, first thing, let's write our name up the top. Very good. Let's write our names up at the top. Okay, and down at the bottom, I have 4 parts of my clock. So let's go ahead and cut out those 4 parts. Okay. Okay, we're going to cut out those 4 parts. Okay. Now, can you pick up the one that looks like this? It says H-O-U-R. Hour hand. Okay. Now, let's take a look at our clock. And do you remember, if we look over at our clock here, which one is our hour hand? Is it this little hand? Is it this hand that moves all the way around? Is it the hand that points up, the longer hand that points up to the 12? Or is it this number? Which one is our hour hand? Very good. It's our little hand. It's our little hand that points to the number. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our glue, and down in this box right here, we're going to go ahead and glue hour hand, because that is the hour hand on our clock. It's a little hand, like my red one, that points to the hour. It tells us that that is 4 o'clock because this hand is pointing to the 12. All right, let's go ahead and pick up this one. This says minutes hand. Can you find that one for me? All right, now remember, the minutes hand, that's the one. Let's take a look at our clock. This was our minutes hand on our big clock. So can you find the minutes hand on our clock? Very good. Our minutes hand is pointing up to the 12. There it is. So it's saying it's 4 and the minutes is o'clock because it's pointing up to the 12. So let's go ahead up to our top here. And let's glue on our minute hand, okay? So we've taken care of our hour hand and we've taken care of our minutes hand. All right, now let's pick up this one. This says clock numbers. Can you find our clock numbers on our clock here? Very good. It's pointing, this one with the arrow is saying, well, here, is this an example of a clock number? Very good. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll put our glue right here for our clock number. Very good. Okay, we have one left. We have the second hand. Very good. Where do we have it left? Okay, remember my second hand moves around. Can you find the second hand on our clock? Very good. The second hand is right there. So let's go ahead and put our glue there. And let's go ahead and put our second hand right there. Okay, so if we look at our clock, we have our minute hand pointing to the 12. Right? Then we have our hour hand, which was pointing to the 4 to say it is 4 o'clock. Our second hand is the one going around and around and around, right? It's moving faster. And then our clock numbers are those numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and 12 that go around the face of that clock, okay? All right, great job on that. Now what I would like you to do is let's take a look at your hour time paper. Okay, your hour time paper. All right, let's go ahead and let's put our name at the top of the page. Okay. When we talk about hour time, time to the hour, remember I said it's going to be when that big hand is pointing up to the 12. So we can say it's 1 o'clock. We could say it's 2 o'clock. We could say it's 3 o'clock. As long as that big hand is pointing to the 12, we are telling time to the hour. So it sounds like 3 o'clock. 4 o'clock. It's to the hour, no minutes. We're not talking about minutes right now. So let's take a look at our timesheet. It says, we know it's time to the hour when the big hand is on the 12. Very good. That way we can say 3 o'clock. Let's take a look at this first clock, okay? We want to find the clocks that are set to the hour. Okay, that means that our big hand is pointing to the 12. Very good. Let's take a look at this one. All right, so I see a little hand pointing to 5. Very good. Where's the big hand pointing to? The 12. So we could say that this clock says 5 o'clock. Is that set to the hour? Yes, it is, because that big hand is pointing to the 12. Very good. So we can go ahead and circle this. It says you can color. I'm just circling because I have a marker right now. Let's take a look at this one. All right, so our little hand, let's find that little hand. It's pointing to kind of between the 1 and the 2, right? Yeah, it's not really pointing to a clock number. Where's our big hand pointing? To the 6. Is this clock set to the hour? Nope, it's not, because it's not set to the 12. Very good. So we're going to skip over that one. Let's go to this one. This one says 10, right? It's pointing to the 10. The little hand is pointing to the 10. Where's the big hand, the long hand pointing to? It's pointing to the 12. Is this set to the hour? Yes, it is, because it's saying 10 o'clock, because that big hand is set to the 12. Very good. So we're going to go ahead and circle this one, because that's set to the hour. How about this one? Well, let's look at the little hand. Is it pointing to an hour right now? Not really. It's kind of between that 9 and the 8, right? Where's the big hand? Is it pointing to the 12? Nope, it's only pointing to the 6. Is this clock set to the hour? Nope, this says a different time. Good job. All right, now let's go down to, it says draw clock hands to match the times below. All right, so let's take a look at this clock. First thing I want you to do is let's draw our big hand so we know we're set to the hour. So go ahead and draw your hand up to that 12, okay? So that's where that big hand is setting to the 12, okay? So we know we're going to set to the hour. Now, down below, it says 5:00. What time do you think that might be? 5 o'clock. That would be like on a digital watch or on like your microwave or on your oven. You might see a clock set like that. That's called a digital watch or a digital clock. It's saying 5 o'clock because it's 00. That means that that big hand is set to the 12. There are no minutes. So where do you think we have to draw our little hand to? To the 5. Very good. And now our clock says 5 o'clock. Good job. How about this one? It says 2, right? So this is 2 o'clock. If I were looking at a microwave or your TV or in your car, it would look like this. There are no minutes, so we know it's set to the hour. So let's draw our hand to the 12, okay? And where is it pointing to? It should point to 2. Very good. And now it says 2 o'clock. Very good. All right, last one. This says, if I were looking in my car or microwave or TV, it says 10, right? No minutes, so we know it's to the hour. So let's draw our long hand there. So it's saying 12, okay? Because there are no minutes. It's 00. And where should our little hand be pointing to? To the 10. Very good. And now it says 10 o'clock. Very good. So we have 5 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. All right, my friends, good job starting with time. It's tricky, but we're going to keep working on it, and we're just going to keep practicing on time to the hour. Great job, and I will see you in a little bit for some reading. All right, bye, friends.